numbers 6, 7 all day long. If you've heard that trend, it has been raging since September. It has not stopped. The numbers 6, 7 are not on here because those numbers literally drive me bonkers in my day-to-day. So let's start with some numbers. So my family and I, we live in a 750 square foot New York City apartment. We have a railroad style apartment, which is so exciting because it means that every room is essentially a hallway to the next room. So it is long and narrow. You walk from one room to the next. 1100, we also have a cottage that we bought in Pennsylvania in 2019 before our third daughter was born. I'm a teacher, and so at the end of the school year, we like to just pack things up and we go there for the summer. So it's a really nice complement to the city life to actually have time to ride bikes and swim in the lake and just explore. I have 3 daughters. For some reason, we gave them all the same letter to start with, which is M. I don't know why we did it. We have a Mabel, a Matilda, and a Margaret. So essentially, I just get all of their names mixed up and someone comes. 6, I walk 6 blocks to and from school every day. This was my Halloween costume. I was a superhero. You can see that I even was able to get my name on the back of my underoos, so I have this superhero moniker, but every day being able to walk 6 blocks from home to school has been such a gift. 18, I've been married to my wife for 18 years. We got married, I guess, when we were children, because I look so very young. I've also been a teacher for 18 years. So my dad was also a teacher. He was a principal. Part of my story is that I transitioned from teaching to being a school administrator, and then gladly 3 years later transitioned back to being a teacher, which has simplified and tidied up my life in some really powerful ways. So if you're a teacher or if you're an administrator, I really appreciate all the work that you do because it is not work that I want to do. I really enjoy being in the classroom with the kids. And then number 1 in the middle. There is just one of me. And sometimes I get asked, how do you do all the things that you do? And I think that it really goes back to that idea of ruthlessly decluttering a lot of the excess in my life. Our square footage is really small. My commute is very easy and manageable. I'm able to walk home for lunch every single day. As a teacher, I have a prep period where I get to leave school and go home and eat lunch and then go back and teach in the afternoon. But all of those are things that may seem insignificant, but yet they've had such a huge impact on time and energy. I'm not waiting around for this hypothetical someday when things are going to get better. I really am trying now to make space for what matters most. Now, I'm going to read you a little bit from the introduction of the book because every good story starts with a big mess, and I haven't always been so tidy, and so I thought we would start with a messy moment first before I give you some tips on how exactly do you tidy up your own messes that you may have. So we're starting with what I learned from the Great Bedroom Flip. And this is a story that some of you may relate to, especially men or husbands in the audience. If you have a hard time listening when your wife or spouse says don't do that right now, and you go ahead and plow through anyway. So, what I learned from the Great Bedroom Flip. Over sausage, eggs, and coffee that morning, and amid the squeals of 2 young children, I'd announced my ingenious plan to my wife, Emily. We were going to switch bedrooms with our kids. We lived in a 750 square foot apartment in Queens, and after welcoming Matilda home to her older sister, Mabel, we'd questioned how are we going to make this small apartment work with the 4 of us. We loved where we lived. After all, New York City is the concrete jungle where dreams are made of, but things felt cramped. So my thinking was, Emily and I would move into the smaller of the 2 bedrooms, giving the girls our larger one, a better use of space all around. Emily didn't really share my enthusiasm. Do not start that project today, she said. You always think that a project is going to solve your problems. Please just relax. I hate when people tell me to relax, but sometimes I have trouble sitting through an entire movie, so I knew she had a point. I was 2 days into leave from my job. My purpose was to rest, and think about what I really wanted to do after I'd had an emotional meltdown on a New York City sidewalk a few months earlier. The plan was also that I'd use the downtime to help care for our littlest girl at the time, Matilda. "Please just relax while you're gone," she said again an hour or so later, turning and stepping out into the narrow hallway with our 2 girls and her sister Audrey, who at the time was our downstairs neighbor. I gave her a gentle, scheming smile. As they walked down the hall, I closed the door and pressed my ear against it. I waited for the sound of their feet trudging down the 3 flights of stairs to the New York City sidewalks below. And once the coast was clear, I started the move. Seeing is believing. Show and tell has always been a hit with students in my classroom, and there was a reason for that. I knew that if I could actually show Emily the new arrangement with my furniture swapped, she'd understand the greatness of my idea. Well, after prepping the girls' furniture for the swap, a crib, toddler bed, bookshelves, and wardrobe, and disassembling furniture in our bedroom, my plan hit a major snag. The bedroom, the furniture, it was too heavy for me to lift and move alone. So I saw a pile of beach towels on the floor, and I grabbed them and shimmied them underneath furniture legs so that I could slide the furniture while preventing damage to the floor. That was a good start, but it's not like it made the furniture any lighter. I had to resort to plan B. I feverishly emptied out all the dressers and wardrobes to make them lighter and move them more quickly and made piles all over the floor. I then realized I had completely obstructed my path. It looked like all the pieces of furniture had thrown up, and then I wanted to throw up. I sat down for a moment and put my hands on my face. The chaos that surrounded me was a physical manifestation of the mental and emotional mess that I felt inside. Then, click, I heard the lock turn. The blood drained from my face. I waded through the mess of the front door to intercept Emily. "Please don't get mad," I said, which is never a good way to start a conversation. "I've been working on something that I want to show you." Emily walked towards the bedrooms. Her face instantly flushed. "You really did this?" she said in shock, walking from the first bedroom into the adjoining second room. Audrey, her sister, walked up behind her, gasped, and then put her hand over her mouth, laughing. The adoration and thanks that I'd imagined would accompany this big reveal didn't materialize. I anticipated an HGTV kiss and cry kind of reaction, but in fact, the chaos that I had created in that 1 hour took months for us to fully sort out. Now, I bring that up because so many of us go into this new year with new you, new year energy, and we are going to declutter everything, including our spouse's stuff, our kids' stuff, our parents' stuff, stuff that has been handed down to us. And what often happens is we are so inspired and we start unloading everything, and then suddenly you look at a room and you are faced with the pile of junk that you have sitting in front of you, and then there's this feeling of, why did I do this? I'm never doing this again, and you just walk away or just let it sit and fester. And so today, we're going to talk about a few different approaches. So I did learn quite a bit from the great bedroom flip. We did get everything put back, but it did take months. And now my daughters, they're very excited because they have the largest bedroom in the apartment. They are stacked triple high in a triple bunk, which I think is just one of the greatest creations ever. But giving them the larger bedroom really did open up all of these other possibilities for us as we were thinking about our space. So the book itself, there are 2 main parts: tidy up your mind and tidy up your space, because as you know, oftentimes physical clutter and mental clutter go hand in hand. If mentally you feel like a hot mess, sometimes you just look at your closet and it mirrors exactly what you may be feeling inside. And so it was really important when writing that I tackled both of those, that there is a mental health component to tidying up, while also there's the physical act of what do you do with all of the stuff and how do you make decisions. And so, as we're thinking about tidy up your life, it really is this idea of routines, rhythms, systems. This is just one. I am still so proud of the fact, and I'm going to play it again, that, let me go back. Those are my routines. Let's see. It's my little lazy Susan in the kitchen that I love figuring out what are these small ways to make things a little bit easier that so often everyone and their mother puts all of the condiments in the door of the refrigerator. But if you share your house with little kids and our refrigerator, the part it's on the bottom, their grubby little paws are all in where those glass bottles are, which means that those glass bottles get picked up and then they smash on the floor. So I moved all of our condiments to the top shelf with the lazy Susan. No offense if there are any Susans in the audience, but it just spins around. And so I'm always trying to find little hacks that just make things a little bit better. And so when I think about my day, I think about this idea of routines, rhythms, and systems. So there are a few here. One routine is I always start my day with cleaning something in our apartment. So it is this idea of cleaning one space and then moving on, because it just does not make sense for me to clean everything all in one day, because I have little walking tornadoes that I live with who are immediately sort of messing things up behind me. And if I had 2 to 3 hours to do a sustained activity on the weekend, do you really think that I would want to spend that cleaning for that entire duration of the time? So for me, cleaning one area of the house each weekday sort of helps. I also, in the middle, I have this rhythm of exercising and caring for myself, because when I move my body in the mornings, I'm able to better show up for my family and students throughout the day. And then systems is that idea of how do you implement systems that help to make life just a little bit easier. And the foundation of this is naming the problem that you're trying to solve. So often in January, we're ready to take on the world. We are going to exercise more. We're going to eat healthy. We're also going to clean our house. We're going to declutter every single closet. We're going to be much more efficient at work. We're going to call all of our friends. We're going to speak to our mom and dad much more frequently. Plus, we're going to introduce new beauty or skincare routines. We're going to wear our sunscreen, not just in the summer, but also in the winter. And we're going to have everything organized by the front of the door. Now, that sounds like a really wonderful list, but I'm exhausted just like you're exhausted. And sometimes when we're trying to start new things, the problem is that we don't actually name the problem that we're trying to solve. And so when we introduce these new routines, these new systems, if we can be really clear on what is the problem that we're trying to solve, that helps us to be a bit more successful with what it is we want in terms of the outcomes. So every January, something wild happens, which is where we feel wildly motivated to declutter. Now here you can see, I am still trying to get a brand deal with Mattel, but Mattel a few years ago made a Barbie doll that looked exactly like me. It is not yet a Tidy Dad Barbie doll, but I think that we could start something. My daughters like building these huge messes that their Barbies create, and then they mock me by bringing over little Tidy Dad who talks to the little Barbies and tries to get the Barbies to clean things up. So I thought at the start of January, this is the perfect sort of illustration, because oftentimes we walk up, we do feel wildly motivated to declutter, but then there's the question of, what do you do? So some of us feel like New Year, New You season, and then I'm generally pretty clean. This is the least clean thing that I'll say today. But other people have this New Year, screw you sort of mentality, because there's this feeling that in January we have to tackle and overhaul everything in our lives, when the reality is we're still exhausted from December and also from November and from October, that it's not like January 1st hits and suddenly you have all of this motivation. So the strategy that I've been using with people on Instagram that I was going to talk to you a little bit about today is this idea of tidying up your January. It is a play on the title, obviously with your, but you may notice that I capitalized all of the letters in your, because so often we think about other people's things before we actually think about our own. And it's that analogy of being on the airplane, which always brings me lots of anxiety, but they always give us that explanation of what to do with our oxygen mask. Are you supposed to put your oxygen mask on someone else first? No, you're supposed to put on your own oxygen mask. But why don't we actually do that in our own lives? So often we think of everyone else. We think of our kids, our coworkers, our families, our parents, and we're willing to sacrifice ourselves When the reality is that if we can do a little bit to care for ourselves, that helps us better show up for other people in our lives. And so this challenge started with this idea of decluttering without negotiating. When you declutter your stuff, that means that you don't have to talk to anyone about what you're choosing to keep, what you're choosing to move out. Day one was socks. Hopefully, you're the only one that wears your socks, right? So you should be able to name, after you clear your drawer, as you're assessing what you want to keep or move out, you're asking yourself what seems to be silly questions. But what do you like from the fabric of your socks? Where on your ankle do you like your socks to hit? Do you like low-rise socks? Do you like high-rise socks? Do you need socks for different purposes? Do you need compression socks? Do you like silk socks? Do you need socks to go with certain dress shoes? Do you like them thick? Do you like the ones with the little grippies on the bottom? Do you like fun prints? Do you want flannel ones? These are questions that as you're sorting through can actually give you deeper insight into yourself. Because the idea is that we should be surrounded with things that actually bring us joy, that we love, but why not have socks that you actually look forward to putting on every single day, as opposed to, like I have done, my daughters got me socks that said GOAT, which was greatest of all time. I wore them and wore them. They then got a hole in the front. My mother-in-law tried to sew them multiple times. We could not fix them. I continued to wear them. But then I was like, did my daughters give me those socks so that I could be annoyed all day long with my big toe sticking through? No. So I was able to let go of the socks. I also, when I was decluttering without negotiating, I had to text my sister because I found a belt that her ex-boyfriend had made me 20 years ago. And I texted her and I said, it was a handmade belt out of leather. And I was like, Kristen, can you please remind me of the reasons why you broke up with Aaron? Because I have this belt. I have had it for 20 years. I don't know why I still have it. Every time I see it, I think of him. So should I think, are these like negative reasons? And she said, yes, there were all these reasons why she chose to break up with him. And so I was able to, this January, break up with that belt that I had been holding on to that has just been taking up space. So start with your stuff. No negotiating, no family meetings. That can just be a strategy for your January. So this was the full calendar. So this calendar, I have it on my Substack. I have a website, thetidydad.com, which gives you access to all of these different things. But as you can see, in 31 days, you can get pretty far with decluttering your things. Today, if you want to go home right now, or not right now, but after this, today is your hair products and hair tools. So I fired my barber. I haven't had a haircut in about 3 months because the last time I went, he nearly fell asleep while he was cutting my hair, and he cut off both of my eyebrows, and then he shaved it completely down, and then he made a nick straight up and down, which is evidently very trendy for much younger people than me. So luckily, my eyebrows have grown back in, but at the ripe old age of 39, I am now learning how to blow dry my hair. So today was hair tools and products because I don't wake up looking naturally this beautiful. So it does take a little bit of time, but it's when I should have the gel and the brush and the barber powder, which I've never seen in my life until a different barber showed it to me, but I should have the things that I need in my little toiletry area so that in the 2 minutes before I need to leave for school, I'm able to completely get ready and presentable. Because when I don't, the kids say, "What happened to you?" Which is what happened last week when I didn't have time to fix my hair before school. So this calendar can be really helpful, and you can start whenever, but focus on your stuff. So the idea is that we are always honing our decision-making skills, even with our underwear. There are those life lessons that our parents taught us about how you never leave the house in dirty or holey underwear because you never know what is going to happen to you. It's all these things that will happen to you, and God forbid anyone, judge you for the underwear that you're wearing. But the idea is that you want to hone your decision-making with low-stakes stuff so that it can to higher stake stuff like, where do you want to live? What kind of car do you want to drive? What kind of job do you want? How do you want to spend your time? I really did find that as I had imploded our apartment, I was on mental health leave. So I was able to take 2 months off because clearly the key to success in my life was not becoming a school administrator. I had tried working longer hours, answering more emails, being more friendly and presentable to everyone at school at the same time that I had a 3-year-old and a less than 1-year-old at home. It wasn't a great time for me to upsize my career at the same time that I was upsizing my family. And so I found that as we were, during those 2 months, sorting through the mess that I had created by switching bedrooms with our daughters, I was able to think, okay, if I'm scrutinizing the pants that I'm wearing, why can't I also scrutinize the actual type of work that I enjoy doing? Not all people are built to be bosses. And it is perfectly fine to say, I do not want to be a boss. I don't want to manage anybody. If somebody's late at work, I do not want to be the person to say, why are you late at work? I want to be the boss of myself and, as I have found, 10-year-old children, because I generally am always right. And, they have to listen. So through our stuff, we can hone decisions for the bigger, more consequential things that we want to tackle. And it really is that idea of clear sorting, assessing, and planning, which makes the extraordinary moments possible. So I tried this out. Now, this is a very vulnerable part of my slide because I'm nearing 1 year of me overhauling my physical health, which I do feel like has so many parallels to the physical side of ourselves. So you can see the before, you can see the after, but I put this timeline down below because it goes to show that changes don't happen magically overnight. It's a series of small steps that we put into place that can then lead to lasting change. And sometimes we have to ask for help. That is one of the chapters in the book. Chapter 5 is stop doing all the work, which I know for a man telling people that you just need to stop doing all the work, it was intentionally cheeky because there's this feeling of, great, another person just telling us, don't do more, just do less. But the idea is that sometimes you have to bring on people to help you. So I found this personal trainer. He lives in Liverpool. I had followed him on Instagram for about 2 years. And finally, I was like, I'm going to see if he can help me. Like, can he actually step in and help me overhaul some of these routines? And so it brings up this idea of the messy middle, that the messy middle is that pivotal stage in any journey where the end goal feels visible, but the path forward remains daunting. It's this feeling of, I know where I want to go, and I have to trust that I can get there. And oftentimes it's marked by denial and change. And so physically, I feel like this year, since the book has come out, book writing, it is really difficult. It's very sedentary. You are in your head. But then there's also the stress of, oh my goodness, is anyone going to want to read this book? Are people going to find the strategies realistic? I also thought in the back of my head, oh, I'm supposed to be like funny and gentle and kind. So also while writing the book, I decided to become a stand-up comedian. So I thought the best way for me to learn how to be a comedy writer is to do stand-up. So I performed 3 times across comedy clubs in New York City. I opened once for Jim Gaffigan, who's like the dad comedian. But then I thought, is the goal of my life to just stand in the back of really seedy, dirty New York City comedy clubs with the hope that someday I can make it? So I did not make it as a stand-up comedian, but I did learn how to put myself out there, how to try, even though it felt overwhelming because I was not good at stand-up comedy at first. Every class I went to, we had to stand up and perform. And then the professor would live critique. And then there was one man in my class who also felt that it was his responsibility every week to also live critique. So she would finish, and then he would raise his hand and he would say, I really didn't think that any of those jokes were funny, and your delivery was really dry, and you need to just stop reading. And I was like, Why don't you get up and perform so that I can say something mean about you? But I am kind, I'm gentle, I'm tidy dad, I have to be put together. But this is to show you that it's just a physical representation of how those small steps can really lead to lasting change, and that tidying isn't just about the physical stuff. Now, as we think about your year, there are a couple things that I have found to be really helpful. So one is having a decluttering calendar for the year. The idea is that you can begin to align when you're going through stuff at the same time that people are shopping for things, because it is much easier to get rid of your stuff, to donate it to other people, to get it to the right places when it's seasons when people actually need things. For example, no one is looking for winter coats in April or May, which is when parents are like, oh, your winter coat doesn't fit, let's go ahead and get rid of it. No one wants it then, but people are looking in October or November. People are looking for kids' items right before the holidays. We always have in March and April, my children, they are all born 6 weeks apart from one another, because there is, if you can time it, there's an optimal time of year when you're a teacher to try to have a kid, which is the springtime, because telling your principal that you're going to be out for August and September, that's really difficult. So we have March through April, but we always go through things right before their birthdays, because it's much easier for us to then welcome new things when we've made a little bit of space. Then the other thing that I do is, in the book, there's this strategy called the 30-day experiments. And it's this idea of January isn't the only time to start something new. The idea is that at the start of the month, it can be a new opportunity to experiment or to try something. Now, this is, again, one of those strategies that can sound a little bit silly, but there are some experiments that I have tried. So, for example, I always have a word that's sort of the theme of the month. So January is self. So this January, I have been experimenting with, can I start my day with 10 minutes of yoga in the morning to wake my body up before I have my workout? So what I started doing was I found on YouTube this little yoga guy who has 10-minute yoga videos, and I set my coffee to brew, and I do yoga while the coffee is brewing. It's not something new. I haven't invented this time. It is the coffee's brewing, I'm able to do my yoga, and then I drink it as soon as it's done. This way, I don't throw out my back, because I'm 39, even though I look still in my 20s. I'm about to enter 40. I now have to warm my body up before I can exercise, or else, instead of exercising, I'm just hurting my back and hurting my neck. So it has been a win-win in this way. February, love. People are always thinking about love in February, right? So it's that idea of relationships. But what could an experiment look like related to the idea of relationships? Does it mean that you're actually talking to one another at dinner time? Does it mean that you put your phones away? Does it mean that you try to reconnect with people or make phone calls to people that you may haven't spoken to before? The idea with the 30-day experiment is you choose something that's interesting to you, that you've always wondered, and you use it like testing a hypothesis. The hypothesis being like the example of calling people or texting people that you haven't spoken to. Does sending a text to people in the mornings as I'm waking up and reconnecting make me feel like I'm more connected to my friends or my family? For some of you, you may go through the experiment and you may say, yes, that was wonderful. For others of you, you may say, now that it's the month of March, I'm just going to become a hermit and I'm not going to talk to anyone again. That is the purpose of the experiment. You see, does it bring you life? And if it doesn't, then you just sort of move on from there, and then you move to the next month. But these are things that help me with my year. And then this decluttering calendar, what it really means is that tidying is not a one-and-done process. People like to ask me that all the time. They're like, so if I read your book, does that mean that I'm never going to have clutter again? To which I say, no, Pam. This is, again, I've already talked about Susan's. But for some reason, many of the trolls on Instagram are named Pam. So if there are any Pams in the audience, that's why I used it as the example. Oftentimes these Pams live in Texas because they say, well, if you lived in Texas, then you wouldn't have to always be going through the clothes in your closet. Because they have really large palatial closets that are as big as this room, evidently in Texas. So Pam, she had to stop. What I did learn about Pam was that one particular Pam, her one daughter moved to New York City with her husband. Her daughter had a baby. Her daughter is now raising her granddaughter, her only granddaughter, in New York City. So instead of taking out her anger towards her daughter, she's taking out her anger towards me. But what Pam didn't know is that I have a block button. So I was kind to Pam for so long, but after she once again told me about my closet and what I needed to do to fix it, I thought, I can fix you, Pam, and I just blocked her. So you can declutter people. You can. It is a very easy thing to do to set those boundaries. So again, no offense to anyone named Pam, which is also my mother-in-law's name. So it's a nice. And this is the 30-day experiment again. Give yourself 30 days to try it. Reflect and decide what you want to take with you, and then make it something that you actually want to do. Some months it's been, I'm not going to watch any shows, and I'm just going to read my books. It was a fun experiment, but I missed all my Bravo shows the next month. So I was like, I don't want to take this into my future. I experimented with one summer joining a summer swim team at our neighborhood in Pennsylvania. And I've always been terrified of open water swimming because of the fish that swim. And so that, swim alongside me. So that summer, that 30-day experiment was, can I show up with my swim? It's a triathlete community. Can I get up the courage and fear to swim back and forth in this little lake? And over the course of the month, I was able to. And this spring, I did my first ocean open water swim, which was quite, which was quite awful. The people around me, they got stung by jellyfish. I was either swimming too slow or was not in the stream because nothing hit me. Do I want to continue with open water ocean swims? I don't think so, but at least I learned it about myself, and that came from the experiment. So just because you say you're going to do it doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. And so, what can you do? Because clearly, based on my winning smile, my charming personality, you may say, what else can I learn from this guy? So, some ways in which you can follow along. So on Instagram, I'm known as Tidy Dad, but I also have a Substack. So one of the things that's been really fun is continuing to write. It is one thing to write a beast of a book, and it is another thing to each week be able to publish new articles and idea and things that inspire me. It's really nice to write without things needing to all quickly tie up together into a little bow. I even started a new book proposal in the fall that was titled, Do I Have to Clean This Up? Because I thought that that would be a cheeky follow-up to Tidy Up Your Life, is this existential question of, do I have to clean this up? But then I gave the manuscript to my wife to begin to edit, and I got this eye twitch that came back, and I was like, okay, the eye twitch coming back is a sign that I do not need to write this book right now. So I'm still learning, even in my own life, how do I tidy things up? But I also have a podcast. I have new episodes that come out on Saturdays. The episodes are between 5 to 7 minutes. They are short, digestible little tidy tidbits. Would you expect anything less? When people are like, wow, you have such a short podcast. I'm like, it's to the point, get in, get out, move on with these new strategies. And then there's Facebook, there's TikTok. Really, you just Google tidy, and there's first Marie Kondo, and then there's me. So thank you for coming. And so we have a little bit of time if you have questions. Just don't ask me if I'm going to move to Texas and get a bigger closet. Yeah, I don't, however you.
You do it, I'll follow.
Okay, I saw this hand first. Yep. Mm-hmm.
what is your advice for getting rid of sentimental objects? Because I am sentimental and I have a hard time throwing things away that, are like from my mom or
Hmm.
photos, whatever.
Yeah. So one is, I think, sentimental, you put it on the back burner until you feel like you have honed some of these other sort of decluttering strategies. That it's that idea of assess. It's, can you start with more inconsequential categories before you move on to sentimental? Because so often people start with sentimental and then it becomes a non-starter. You've got to hone your decision-making ability. But then with sentimental, I mean, it was interesting in the fall because my dad's mom passed away. And so we went in and together with my extended family, we did almost this death cleaning of sorts where we were all confronted with just the full weight of sentimental things and memories. But it was really interesting before I went into the house. I was like, let me think back on my grandma and what were some of those memories? What were some of those things that came back to mind? And the first thing that I wrote on my list was she had a light switch cover that was directly by her back door that it is the weirdest light switch cover. It is this pig, and the pig has this spoon, and the spoon, you can toggle it off, up and down, to turn on and off the light switch. And that, to me, was the first thing that I took, and it is now in our kitchen in New York City. And every time that I see it, it sparks that memory. And so for me, that question of what is the deeper memory or meaning behind that sentimental object, that really helped me to make decisions about what to keep and what to move out. Because I'm realizing it isn't the volume. I don't need the volume. We did not need the volume of all of her possessions. But what I want to be surrounded by are the things that when I see it, it triggers that memory for me. If it's just going to live stored away in a box, then that actually isn't something to me that's of great significance or value. So every day, I also have a little light switch pull. She had these jewels that were on her light switches or on her ceiling fans in some of her rooms. And I have those, and I walk into the living room and I see it every morning and I think of my grandma. And so that has helped me to make decisions about sentimental items. It's what can I actually use? What actually serves my life right now? But what actually triggers that deeper feeling behind it? And is there an object that counts for many? Like from my grandma, I also have this really ugly lamp in my bedroom. It is made out of this vase. It is this Roseville yellow pottery. But I remember the day when my grandma was dickering and fighting with the person selling that lamp because she was trying to get 10% off and he wasn't giving it to her. And so every time I see that lamp, I'm immediately taken back to my grandma, which is what you want from that is what sentimental items, that's the purpose I believe that they serve, is to trigger those memories. You just don't need the full volume or weight of it.
My question is, my husband doesn't want to throw anything away because he might need it the next day, even though he hasn't needed it for 5 or 10 years. So I'm in a bad situation.
It is, and what it reminds me of is something I talk about in the book is this, all of these hypothetical doomsday scenarios that people find themselves in. And I think you often have to interrogate the why behind the hypothetical doomsday situation. So for example, years ago, I was stranded in a Bulgarian airport for almost 20 hours because the airline lost my suitcase. I was supposed to fly abroad to teach for the summer. The group did not know that I was on the plane. I lost all of my money in the payphone trying to contact my wife to get in touch with the program people just for someone to come and pick me up. From that day on, I have never checked a bag. We have flown to Europe. We've been on long trips. I have little kids. And I had to confront the hypothetical doomsday scenario for why people overpack. I have never been to a place where I cannot find a store to get that extra toothbrush. Or, oh my goodness, what if it rains in all of my clothes? There are so many situations that we build up in our heads. And I've had to confront the What is that deeper why behind it? And so, gently, it would be interesting to ask your husband, or that may be the follow-up, which is honey, what is the hypothetical doomsday scenario that you are continually planning for because you have 5 different copies of the same things? And that also, I think, people overbuy in many categories because there are not clear systems in place for where anything is going to go. Walmart, that store triggers all of these deep feelings inside of me, because all you have to do is you have to go into that store and you begin to look around at how much stuff is piled up. And then you look inside people's carts and you think, look at all this stuff that these people are pushing around. And there are some people who go every day and they push around carts with all this stuff. And I always think, where is this volume of stuff going? It's even thinking about toiletries. Really, you need the one you're using and one backup. Why do you need 15 bottles? Right? And some of this is still, now we're almost 6 years out of COVID. I remember what it was like to wipe down my stuff and not have things. But there are many more strategies in place now to get the things that we need when we need them. So I too have been trying to quiet the doomsday wild scenarios that come into my head sometimes.
You talked a lot about your children and your wife when you were cleaning that up. How much have they changed, and how tidy are they?
So it's interesting, and none of them are here, so I could do a range. So when I think of, this is the scale. So when I think of who's the tidiest, I think there's me, then it's my older daughter, Mabel, then it's my middle daughter, Matilda, then my wife, and then my youngest daughter, Margaret, who is a Spitfire. I was going to name her Roxanne, which I actually think would have been a better name, and then I could have nicknamed her Roxy because she has this feisty spirit. But we all have different thresholds of mess and tidiness. And what we've had to learn with them is, and I was actually talking about this before, over Christmas break, I finally was like, I have to establish the house rules. I turned to my wife and I was like, do you think that we have clearly outlined for our children what our actual rules are for living with us? Like, why am I continuing to say things should not be on the floor? Like, there is a basic expectation. Anyone who lives with me, anyone who wants to move in with me, I really just don't want things laid on the floor. Like after you have showered, why is the floor the first place that you throw your clothes? So we have had to work on establishing house rules. It's obviously we're always in flux because the girls and their ages, but I feel like more so, it's been this conversation around preferences. I like things closed behind doors. My wife likes things organized and out in the open. My 3 daughters, they each have their own wardrobe, and if you were to look at them, they all have their different systems, but yet we've also had to align on what are the systems that we all share and what do we do to support it, because when the house is messy, when no one is helping out, when either I'm doing everything or my wife is doing everything, what is the inherent impact on everyone? And that impact is people get yelled at. We're frazzled. There's not time to do what it is that we want to do. We feel like we're wasting time. So it really is that like team effort. And where it comes from for me is I've been a teacher for 18 years. This year, they passed a new law in New York City, so I only have 12 kids in my class. It is down from a high of 32. So I walk in every day and it's like, boys and girls, what do you want to do? It just feels, there's so many possibilities. But having taught that range of kids, if you have 32 kids and there is one teacher, that one teacher cannot control all of this and run all of the systems in that classroom, or else you're literally burnt out and you have nothing to give the next day. So I've been thinking about systems from the time I was a first-year teacher, and that has helped to inform what we want to do at home, because my daughters have to see that they are part of a team. They have to work. And we all have to do things that we don't want to do. Because I get asked from parents all the time, or they say, but my kids don't want to fold their laundry. To which I say, well, I don't want to fold laundry either. And I've said that to my daughters. I don't want to sit here and fold everyone's clothes. So either we can all complain about it, or we can all just work together and then move on to something else. But in life, we are going to have to do things that we don't want to do. We're going to go into workplaces where there are expectations around our space and our stuff. But I feel like with some, there's this entitlement around, but this is my preference and how I want to do things. But you really do, it's important to align on what are those systems and how do you function, and you have to talk to each other, which many people don't do. Mm-hmm. So books, it is a good question. So books, I feel like there's always this thing where it's like certain books enter our lives at certain times, but I don't think that that means that we have to hold on to it forever. Marie Kondo, she had this philosophy where essentially her thing was, if you're not going to sit down and read the book again from cover to cover, then it's sort of time for it to move on, and it has lived its life. I do think that there are those books that we enjoy, that they're beautiful, that we have reference to, but something even with our daughters, we've been going through board books and picture books right now. We've really been leaning into our public library, that it's like there are so many that we just do not have the physical space for them. Something that I've also been trying to do is, that I actually think has been really thoughtful. So an author of mine, this was their advice, an author friend of mine was, you buy the book if you think that the author makes less money than you do. You buy the book. If you know someone that you want to gift the book to after you have read it, then you also buy the book. Because there's something beautiful about even housewarming gifts or birthdays where it's like, I've read this book and I think that you would love reading this book too for X, Y, or Z reasons. And you actually gift the book in that way. But if the author is wealthier than you get it from your library. So that has been so it's funny to think, that has actually helped, to sort of guide me, that it's like, you don't have to hold on to everything, but I really do love the gifting. One of my favorite authors, her name is Jo Piazza. She writes really, really great fiction books. She wrote The Sicilian Inheritance, which I'm sure you can get here. She has dozens of books. But that's her personal strategy, but also the gifting of books to people. Because I think there's something really beautiful and special about, I've read this, and I know that you're going to love it too, and here's why. And then giving the permission to say, and after you're finished, gift it to someone else, because you don't have to burden them with the stuff. I think that's what so often with gifts, we hold on to things because we think that we're like letting down the person who gifted it to us. But the gifting wasn't so that we would then feel burdened to hold on to it forevermore. And that's what I think about sentimental items, that it's like my grandma did not leave all of her stuff behind so that her grandchildren and children could feel burdened to keep every single thing that she collected over her life. She collected those things because she loved them. But that doesn't mean that we all have to love all of her plates, because that woman, we found thousands and thousands of plates, and none of them were a matching set. We started to joke because we were like, why does she have 7 place settings of this one? She has 3 place settings of this one. She has 11 place, like there is no, how do you set a table of 6? And that's why she always had mismatched plates growing up, and we thought that she was just really progressive in terms of her design style. But then we figured out it's because there were no plates that matched. So, I'll check our time. All right, I think we have time for one more. Mm-hmm.
So I know your children are young, but do you think about, well, there's that one book I really like, and I like to save it for my grandchild.
Mm-hmm. And we have set aside sort of some of those things, but I think that for us, we've really had to, because of our physical space, we've had to ruthlessly think about that idea of one counting for many, and we can't have the volume. So for example, we have one little onesie that we photographed all 3 girls in when they were newborns. And we have that one onesie that's framed in the very back of their bedroom. And it's like that when we see it, that counts as a whole lot for us because we remember each of them being in it. Because, and my mother-in-law is not in the audience, so I'll tell you this. She pulled out the Johnson's baby lotion from when my wife was a baby and said, I just loved this smell. Would you like to use this on your newborn baby? And my wife had to say, no, Mom. So there is, I think that there's a limit that is really healthy to establish. So I think that since then she has gotten rid of that. But even she had like plastic sippy cups that she was giving to my nephew. And my sister-in-law had to say, Mom, I think that they've changed the standards on plastics since 1986. Like, I think things have evolved. So I think that it's, what are those items that are really special and meaningful to you that you would feel good holding on to without someone else taking it from you in the future? Because I think so often we think of, I'm going to store up all of these extra sheets so that when so-and-so, my sister did this. She had all these extra sheet sets. So when her stepdaughter went to college or moved into her first apartment, she would get to take all of their old sheets. And I was like, Kristen, really? You're going to say to her, we've been saving all of these old sheets for you for your first apartment. Like, no. Why not let her choose what actual sheets she likes? What color does she like? What fit does she like? What fabric does she like? We all have those personal preferences. So I think it's when that assess is really important.
We're both retired educators. We will not throw a book away. But what we have learned is the library will take your book.
Yes.
And they have a store back there. They make a little bit of money off of it. You put it to good use and give it to a charity.
Yes, we've done that too. And in many spaces in our apartment, we've had to set the physical boundary. And we have said, this is the amount of space that we have allocated to books, for example. When you no longer have space on the bookshelf, that's when it may be time to cull that collection and go through and donate. And that's what we have tried to do so much. It's finding the right people for the things. Even children's books, schools, preschool teachers. We have found the same thing with even our daughters' old toys or card sets. Teachers need multiple sets of the same game. And so when multiple sets of things are given to teachers, they're so grateful and beneficial that it's like, why should we hold on to and store all of these things when someone else could use them? But the last thought is, if you love books, keep all of your books. If you love, like my grandma, plates, then make space for your plates. It's about how can you name what matters to you and ruthlessly make space for it, as opposed to just holding on to everything, which goes back to honing your decision making. If you love that category of stuff, then make space for it. You don't need to make space for everything. And if you love those books, you don't have to listen to anyone who comes in and says, you need to get rid of all of your books. You can go back and say, well, you need to get rid of all of your stuff, or go back to your house. You identify what matters to you, make space for it, and then ruthlessly declutter, which is also what I told Pam from Texas before I blocked her. So thank you.